Hello everyone, welcome to Options with Doug, streaming live on Monday and Wednesday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Bookmap Discord and normally on the Bookmap YouTube channel. This week, my webinars will be on Bookmap Discord only. That is the case for all Bookmap live streams this week. The recording, my understanding is the recording will be available after my webinar today. The recording on Bookmap YouTube. Before I get started, I need to go through the disclosures. General disclosure: all Bookmap Limited materials, information, and presentations are for educational purposes only and should not be considered specific investment advice nor recommendations. Risk disclosure: trading futures, equities, and options involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for General disclosure: all Bookmap Limited materials, information, and presentations are for educational purposes only and should not be considered specific investment advice nor recommendations. Risk disclosure: trading futures, equities, and options involves substantial risk of loss. It is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. Here's my contact information. The best way to get in touch with me is through Discord. My name on Discord is Doug P. Also in Bookmap Discord, there's an Options-Jug chat channel. You can post questions, comments, and content related to the topics of my presentation and the topics of the channel that I'll go through in just a moment. My name on X is Doug Pless, and you can find my post there. For those of you who've seen my webinar before, please bear with me. I need to go over the basis, my approach to trading. It's a little bit different from other traders. So here are the key tenets. This is the basis of my approach to trading. I believe that options trades and market maker hedging activity are key drivers of price in many stocks and futures. And for the S&P 500, SPX is the underlying index. SPY is the ETF version of that index. And the ES futures contract is a derivative of SPX. And we'll see a prime example of that this week as the current September ES contract ceases to exist on Friday. So when traders buy and sell puts and calls in SPX and SPY, market makers take the opposite side of those trades and they hedge their delta exposure with ES futures. And for the NASDAQ 100, NDX is the underlying index. QQQ is the much more liquid ETF version of that index. And the NQ futures contract is a derivative of NDX. And just like the S&P 500, when traders buy and sell puts and calls in NDX and QQQ, market makers take the opposite side of those trades and they hedge their delta exposure with NQ futures. The focus of my presentation today and the focus of the Options-Jug chat channel is options order flow, the impact of options markets on stocks and futures, and the influence of market maker hedging flow on price action. I have a two-step process for trading, and the first is planning. And I use positional analysis. I look at how traders and market makers are positioned in the options market and how those positions change from day to day to develop a thesis regarding the expected trading range and volatility for the day, as well as the directional bias. And the second step in my process is execution. I look at real-time order flow in Bookmap and real-time market maker hedging flow in Spotgamma Hero to confirm my thesis, and for setups. And when I talk about setups today, I will be focusing on an underlying asset. Setups in that asset can be taken with futures contracts, shares of stock, or options, depending on the asset as well as the way you like to trade. Questions and comments are welcome, and I will be watching both the Options-Jug chat channel as well as normally the chat on YouTube, not today. So anyway, I will be watching the chat in the Options-Jug chat channel for your questions and comments. Please feel free to post. I'll do my best to answer your questions. Here's my agenda for today. Oops. That should read Monday, September 15th. First of all, I want to go over news items, economic data, and events for the week. Then I'll go through my positional analysis. Then I'll review some setups from earlier today. Then I'll take a look at the live market. And when I get to live market, if anyone has any stocks they want me to take a look at, please let me know, and I'll be glad to do that. All right, let's get started. First of all, with news items. Jewel 7, welcome, glad you're here. Yeah, sure, I'll do that when I'll talk about how I show the levels on my charts when I get to the ES. So yeah, I'll be glad to do that. And thanks for reminding me. All right, so let's get started with news items. This is the Spotgamma dashboard home screen. First of all, let's take a look at the events calendar for this week. And there are 3 key events this week. So first of all, now, not a key event, but there is retail sales reported tomorrow at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And then on Wednesday, housing starts at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And also building permits. And then the first key event is the VIX expiration, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time on Wednesday. And then the big event of the week, of course, is the FOMC meeting, not the minutes, the meeting that begins, that the announcement comes at 2 p.m. on Wednesday. That's in the middle of my webinar on Wednesday. And I will stop whatever I'm doing, cover the FOMC, and then the press conference begins at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. So more about that in a couple of minutes. So that's the big key event for the week. And then on Thursday, jobless claims at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And then the final key event for the week is the options expiration. And that is the quarterly options expiration. And it's stacking up to be the largest options expiration ever. So let's take a look at that. So what this chart is showing is this is the options expiration concentration chart. Again, on the Spotgamma dashboard home screen, this is showing expirations for the S&P 500, NASDAQ, Russell 2000, vertical axis market maker delta notional, and then the horizontal axis is expiration. So this big orange bar here is the expiration this Friday, the September monthly and quarterly options expiration. And it's showing a huge amount of call delta notional set to expire on Friday. And that could open up the market to more volatility, as a lot of that call delta notional that has been supporting the market expires. And so a very heavily call-dominated options expiration, shown by the orange bars, versus the put delta notional, the negative delta notional, shown with the blue bar. More about that on Wednesday. All right, so that's the news coming up again. Wednesday, VIX expiration, FOMC at 2, then options expiration on Friday. All right, let's move on to positional analysis. Actually, before I do that, let's take a quick look at the FedWatch tool. So what this is showing, the current current Fed target rate is 425 to 450 basis points. What this is showing, there's about a 96% chance of a 25 basis point cut, and then just a little bit less than 4% chance of a 50 basis point cut. So that's a pretty strong consensus that there will be a quarter point cut on Wednesday. So what will be important is the statement, changes in the statement, as well as the press conference that begins at 2:30 again. All right, so now let's move on to positional analysis. And this is the ES futures and Bookmap. We'll start with the S&P 500. Note, I have rolled over to the Z contract now. That is the December contract. So again, I normally roll over on Monday, the week before the final expiration. All right, let's take a quick look at some of the key levels on this chart. Then we'll take a look at our higher time frame. Here's the SPX 6600 call wall. And the S&P 500 is trading above that level. And also the SPY 660 call wall. And ES is back above that level. And note there's a difference in price between ES and SPX. And right now that difference has widened out pretty considerably for the Z contract. So on Friday, the ES to SPX difference using the September contract was about 4 points. And today it's right around 61 points. So ES minus XPX equals 61. So I'm showing that SPX 6600 call wall at ES 6661. All right, before I spend more time on this chart, let's step back. Let's take a look at our higher time frame. I'm going to go to the underlying index. That's SPX. This is a, This is a 1-day, 1-year chart for SPX. And you can see the rally continues. And SPX has moved quite a bit higher above the February highs, making a series of smaller pullbacks, but always higher highs, higher lows. All right, let's take a look now at a closer, shorter time frame. Let's go to a 30-day, 1-hour chart. Let me zoom in on this just a little bit. So again, shallow pullbacks, but SPX always making higher highs. And last Thursday broke out above the SPX 6550 level. And today gapped up above the 6600 call wall that I pointed out earlier. All right, let's take a look at the levels on this chart. I'm going to start with the expected moves. These are based on the options market. The dashed purple lines are showing the lower and upper weekly expected move. Again, based on the options market, based on the closing price for SPX from Friday. And then the dashed blue lines are showing the lower and upper daily expected move, also based on the options market. Again, based on the closing price for SPX from the previous day. So the weekly expected moves will remain in place for the entire week, and then the daily expected moves change every day. And I do post those levels in Discord every day the day before. And I also post the expected moves for ES and NQ. All right, those are the expected moves, and SPX did move up toward the upper daily expected move today, now trading down below that level. All right, let's take a look at the Spotgamma levels on this chart. These are shown with the dark red lines. They're based on gamma-weighted open interest. They're provided to Spotgamma subscribers on a variety of trading platforms. Again, this is Thinkorswim 30-day, 1-hour chart. I'm going to point out the key daily levels. First of all, the put wall is at 6,300. That's a strike with largest net negative gamma that can be expected to act as support, and that is well out of play for today. Next level up is the volatility trigger at 64.95. That is Spotgamma's proprietary volatility and gamma flip level. Below that level, market makers' position on the gamma curve is negative. In a negative gamma environment, market makers have to trade with price to hedge their delta exposure. That tends to enhance or increase volatility. Above that level, market makers' position on the gamma curve is positive. In a positive gamma environment, market makers have to trade against price to hedge their delta exposure. That tends to subdue or decrease volatility. And we'll take this is based on Spotgamma's older total open interest model, and we'll take a look at a current view of gamma in just a couple of minutes. based on their new synthetic open interest model, and that paints a little bit different picture. And then just above that is the absolute gamma strike at 6,500. That's a strike with the largest absolute positive and negative gamma. And that's where most of the gamma-weighted open interest is concentrated. And that level, absolute gamma strike, moved up to 6,500 from 6,000. Oh, maybe, let's say about 10 days ago. And it had been at 6,000 for some time. So now seems pretty firmly settled at 6,500. Then the level that I mentioned before, the call wall, is 6,600. That's a strike with the largest net positive gamma that can be expected to act as resistance. So far, SPX still trading above that level. All right, let's wrap up our view of SPX with a 1-minute chart. Let's zoom in on current price action. We'll start with Thursday, when SPX traded above 65.50. And then on Friday found resistance at the 6,600 call wall, and today gapped up above that level, and then finding resistance at this combo 3 level at 66.17, and then the upper daily expected move just above that. And we'll take a closer look at that, specifically the positive gamma up above these levels in just a couple of minutes. All right, so that's SPX. Pretty narrow range today, again finding a resistance in the positive with the positive gamma, this combo level, and the upper daily expected move up above. All right, let's take a look at SPY. Then we'll get back to Bookmap. Here's the SPY chart. Remember I mentioned the SPY 660 call wall acting as support earlier today. The 661 round number level, not a spot gamma level, acting as resistance, very narrow range. And now SPY is back above its call wall at 660. All right, that's SPY. Now back to Bookmap. So in Bookmap, again, I'm using the Z December contract. So let's zoom in on this. So uptrend pretty much from the open yesterday evening at 6 p.m. Eastern time. So let's zoom in now. So the rally continued. Looks like ES found support at the 6,600 call wall before the cash open. That's just after 8:30 a.m. Eastern time. A little bit of chop after the cash open. Then broke above that 660 call wall. Came back, retested that level. And for some reason, the 661 level is not being shown there. The SPY 661 level. Maybe that's, well, we'll see. All right, so then up above that, this is the ES, upper daily expected move. And I do calculate that independently or separately from the SPX, upper daily expected move. And again, I post expected moves daily and weekly for SPX, ES, and NQ every day, the day before, in Discord, in the Options-Duck chat channel. All right, Jewel 7, this is a good time to talk about how I get these levels on my chart. So let's go back. Go back to the Spotgamma home screen here. So this is where I get the levels. So here are the SPY levels for the day. So this is where I get the levels. And I get the index relationships from a couple different sources. So let's go back to my SPY chart. So I get this is just a little script in Thinkorswim. So this is where I get the ES to SPY, NQ to QQQ, and RTY to IWM relationships. So that's where those are part of the index relationships. And then the other index relationships I get from again, just little things in Thinkorswim. So in Thinkorswim, in a watch list, you can put simple equations in. So here's ES to SPX. Right now it's somewhere between 61 and 62. I'm using 61. Here's the NQ to QQQ, right around 255. I think I may be using 260, so I'm 5 points off on that. Then RTY to RUT, right around 20 right now. All right, so that does change a little bit during the day. All right, so that's where I get all the index relationships. Again, I do post those in Discord. All right, so I get the information from Spotgamma. I get the relationships from Thinkorswim, and so, you know, some simple scripts. All right, then what I do is I use this add-on. This is Pricelines. And this is a paid add-on available in the Bookmap marketplace. This is what I choose to use. And then it points to a spreadsheet right here. So it gets all the information from a spreadsheet. So now let's take a look at that spreadsheet. Oops. All right, so again, I'm using the Pricelines add-on. And then here's we'll take a look at the SPX. So this is where I have all the levels for SPX. Oops. All right, so I've pointed this to the Z contract. These are the ES levels right here in this column. And actually the base column is the SPX levels right here. So I either have a round number level, just a number, or if one of these levels is a Spotgamma level, I include the level and the label. So that's the label that's shown over here. So there's the 6600 call wall. Let's take a look at that level. 6600 call wall. And that is shown at, again, ES 661. And then this specifies how I want that line to appear. Jewel asked, this has nothing to do with the expected moves. These are two entirely separate things. Now I do show the expected moves in here. But let's just focus on the Spotgamma levels. So you would need the index relationships. So you're using the ES to SPX offset, that's 61, to show this right here. And then the SPY relationships, you're using that right here. So you can see there's that 10.1068, the ES SPY relationship that I'm using to show the SPY levels. So I just fill out this spreadsheet in the morning, and that gets the correct SPX and SPY levels on my chart. All right, so let's move on now. All right, so let's wrap up the S&P 500 shifts in levels. There were no shifts in levels for SPX, and for SPY, the put wall and absolute gamma strike both shifted lower, so a bearish price for SPY. All right, let's move on to NASDAQ now. Pretty bullish day here in NASDAQ. And note, NQ is trading up above its upper daily expected move. And again, I posted that level in Discord. And again, that's separate from the index relationships. This is an NQ number. All right, let's take a look at the underlying index charts. So let's go back, take a look at the QQQ chart. Then we'll get back to Bookmap. Zoom in. All right, so QQQ also trading at a very narrow range today, above its call wall at 590. And note that is the highest Spotgamma level for QQQ, the 590 call wall. Pretty similar to SPY. Call wall more or less acting as support, and then just the round number level up above that acting as resistance. All right, that's QQQ. Again, key point here, also trading above its call wall. Let's take a look at NDX. All right, NDX trading well above its call wall at 23,725. And then chopping around this combo 2 level, 24,237. And most recently, that level acting as support. All right, back to Bookmap now. All right, so let me zoom in on this. All right, so pretty much rallying from the open yesterday afternoon. And Joel, you're welcome. Hope that helps. All right. There's the NQ, upper daily expected move, then that combo level that I mentioned just above that, and then there's the QQQ 590 call wall. Two of the key levels today. Let me check my spreadsheet. And for some reason there's so that's why the all right, so that should fix the SPY levels. Let's check the QQQ levels. Yep. All right, so that 591 level should appear now. All right, so NASDAQ continues to grind higher. And shifts in levels for NASDAQ, again, NDX, no shifts in levels. And for QQQ, the volatility trigger put wall shifted higher, absolute gamma strike shifted lower. All right, let's wrap up our positional analysis by taking a look at gamma. Then we'll get to some setups in the live market. All right. So let's take a look at Trace. This is available to Spotgamma subscribers, and what it's showing is this is the gamma heat map. Blue shading indicates positive gamma, and Again, remember in positive gamma, market makers are trading against price, so that it's showing more mean reverting price action. Looks like a little bit of a pocket of negative gamma. That's the red shading where SPX is trading now. So this is for SPX. Blue shading above and below, positive gamma. And let's zoom in one level here. Let's step back in time. We'll go back to the open at 9:30. So there was some red shading, negative gamma up above, indicating, and blue shading down below, indicating positive gamma support down below, and the potential for a faster move up in the negative gamma red shading zone. All right, so let's step through time. And we'll see what slowed down the SPX. All right, so you see that blue shading forming up above, the blue GEX bars over on the left, indicating this is market makers' position, positive gamma. So traders selling calls, market makers buying the calls. So that blue positive gamma finding indicating or providing some resistance up above. Stepping through time, that positive gamma up above, those GEX bars have diminished, and now SPX trading in a pocket of negative gamma. All right, let's move on. Let's take a look at some setups now. So overall, I was looking for pretty low volatility for today with a potential for a blast higher. And so far it's been the S&P 500 is traded in a pretty narrow range today. All right, let's move on. So let's take a look at some setups now. So we're going to move to real-time data now, looking at execution real-time setups. I'm going to start with some trades from earlier today, then we'll get to live market. So this is the hero signal. This is showing options trades and market maker hedging activity for the S&P 500 index components, which we've already taken a look at charts for a couple of those, SPX and SPY. There's also ES and XSP. The white line is price for SPX, and the purple line is the hero signal. And the direction of the hero signal indicates options delta. So a rising hero signal indicates traders are taking positive delta options positions. They are buying calls and or selling puts. Market makers take the opposite side of those trades, and they have to buy futures to hedge their delta exposure. And then a falling hero signal indicates traders are taking negative delta options positions. They are buying puts and or selling calls. And market makers, again, take the opposite side of those trades, and they hedge their delta exposure with ES futures. They sell ES futures. So a pretty choppy day today. Now this is the total hero signal showing puts and calls together. I can separate out puts and calls. So what this is showing is just about an even match between call buyers. That's shown with the orange line, positive notional value right around 2.5 billion, and then blue line, negative notional value, showing traders buying puts. So I'm going to jump back. All right, so pretty even match. Earlier today, it looked like call buyers were really driving price higher. When traders buy calls, market makers sell the calls. They have to buy ES futures to hedge their delta exposure. And that was the case up until about, let's say about 11 o'clock, when the call buyers took the foot off the gas, and then traders started buying puts. And then that really started to accelerate to the downside about 12:20. At that time, traders started selling calls and buying puts. That's bearish momentum, with both the blue line and the orange line moving the same direction. Price is almost always going to move in that direction. All right, then that reversed about 120 when traders started buying. Traders started buying calls and selling puts. Note the flow alert that came in just before this shift from negative delta notional to positive delta notional. That's shown on the orange line, the call line, but it applies to both. So these flow alerts signal significant options activity, and they can often signal reversal and hedging flow. Again, that's what happened here. From negative delta to positive delta, note another flow alert came in. So we'll keep an eye on that for a potential reversal and hedging flow. All right, so let's go to Bookmap. So we know in the morning, traders were buying calls primarily, driving price. So there's that 61 level now, just below the ES, upper daily expected move. Call buyers took the foot off the gas. Then the call sellers, put buyers came in, price dropped down, full alert came in, hedging flow reversed higher. And note the sellers that came in. This is the heat map and Bookmap showing a history of limit orders in the order book. Let me darken that up a little bit. So you can see all the sell orders that came in just below the ES, upper daily expected move, helping to provide resistance at that level. So overall, though, a pretty narrow trading range, choppy day. Let's take a look at the lines in the subchart. First of all, the dark blue line showing cumulative volume delta. And then that levels off about 11 o'clock. Also, the rising yellow line shows buy stop orders, helping to fuel that move higher. And then finally, the falling light blue line indicates large traders were fading that move with iceberg orders they used to hide their size. That's pretty typical for large traders with iceberg orders. They often sell strength and buy weakness. And that's what's been going on here. So they were fading this move up and then also starting to fade this move down. You can see the rising light blue line. Large traders buying weakness, and that helps with that turnaround. But you can see cumulative volume delta still falling. And you can see all the magenta volume dots. Volume dots in Bookmap show market buy minus sell, and there are a lot of magenta volume dots. And they really increase just after 12:30. All right, so that's ES. And let's move on to NASDAQ now. Then we'll take a look at some stocks. Then we'll get to the live market. Pretty strong day in NASDAQ here. And let's see what options traders have been doing. So the hero signal for NASDAQ, actually before I get to that, let's take a look at the other signal for the S&P 500. This is the S&P 500 equities. Not real clear today. So also pretty choppy action. And overall, I found the most clarity by shifting to puts and calls and taking a look at the S&P 500 index signal. All right, so there are two signals that we can take a look at for the S&P 500. That's the index signal and the equity signal, showing options trades and market maker hedging activity for all 500 stocks in the S&P 500 index. Then just like the S&P 500, there are two signals that we can take a look at. The first is NASDAQ, showing options trades and market maker hedging activity for the NASDAQ index components. That's NDX and QQQ. So it looks like pretty much call buyers have been driving NASDAQ today. That's call buyers in the index components. We'll take a look at those. QQQ, and NDX. All right, so put sellers in NDX, shown by the rising blue line, and then call buyers in QQQ, driving price higher. And again, the sum of that is in the NASDAQ index signal. And then there's another signal we can take a look at. That's the Mag 7 signal that's showing options trades and market maker hedging activity with stocks known as the Magnificent Seven: Apple, Amazon, Google, Meta, Microsoft, NVIDIA, and Tesla. And we'll take a look at most of those stocks in just a couple of minutes. All right, so just for the NASDAQ alone, trading NASDAQ, it looks like call buyers primarily driving price higher, but the put sellers came in just before 10:30. All right, back to Bookmap. Bullish day in NASDAQ, and really continues. So a strong opening drive with the call buyers. Continuation of the move that began before the cash open up to the upper daily expected move. Chop around that level. About 11:30, a breakout above that level. Pull back right around 130. And now NASDAQ trying to move higher. Just like the ES, large traders are fading this move with iceberg orders. That's pretty decent size so far since I opened up Bookmap around 6:30 or so. So that's 2,079 sell iceberg orders. But cumulative volume delta rising, and also buy stop orders helping to fuel that move higher, shown by the yellow line on the subchart. All right, so that's the NASDAQ. Let's take a look at some of the Mag 7 components now. And if anyone has any stocks they want me to take a look at, please let me know, and I'll be glad to do that. So let's take a look at, let's start with Apple. And what I want to highlight here is this reversal just after the open. And that is a very specific hero signal that I like to watch for. So let's go to hero, go to Apple, zoom in on this. So this is a call peak pattern. So it looked like it was going to be a bullish opening drive. Traders buy calls. Full alert comes in, signals significant options activity. But that didn't last long, just about 10 minutes. Traders quickly reverse to selling calls. That's a call peak, very reliable bearish reversal signal. And then right around 10:20, or actually right around 10 o'clock or so, call buyers came back in. Now Apple trying to recover. And it looks like it has formed another call peak pattern right just before noon. Whoops. Setting up another short. McLoco wants to take a look at Intel. Sure. And glad to see you here. All right, so that's Apple. 2 call peak patterns. So you could trade this from the long side or the short side, just following the call buyers and call sellers. Let's go to Apple. There's that first call peak reversal. Traders start buying calls again. Take the foot off the gas, call peak patterns, and now a short. All right, that's Apple. Next, Amazon. All right, so bullish morning at Amazon. Let's take a look at Hero. Go to Amazon. All right, Amazon, bullish opening drive. Call buyers came in, flow alert just after the cash opened. Call buyers took the foot off the gas. Price pulls back. More call buyers. Foot off the gas again, and more call buyers. So stair stepping up. And now finally, right around just after 11:05. Call buyers finally took the foot off the gas. That fuel that had been driving Amazon higher is gone now. So again, when traders buy calls, market makers sell the calls, they have to buy stock to hedge their delta exposure. And again, that's a fuel that drives price higher. And when they take the foot off the gas, price consolidates or reverses lower. All right, next stock, Google. And earlier today, maybe still, Google became the next member of the $3 trillion market cap company. I think that joins Apple, NVIDIA, and one other, Microsoft. So the next company, depending on the close here, to join the $3 trillion club. All right, let's see what options traders are doing. So a pretty choppy hero signal here. But it looks like call buyers, call sellers, overall net, excuse me, overall net delta notional call buyers driving price higher. And it looks like Google having some trouble breaking above the 250 call wall. And this is a hero signal that is not that easy to trade. But I did want to point it out because Google's in the news today. So there were a couple of call peak reversal patterns, but overall net bullish for today. So the first one was a nice reversal at the 250 call wall. Back to Bookmap. So there's that nice reversal, but overall a bullish day as Google continues to rally. It's been pretty strong recently. All right, next stock, Microsoft. Continues to move higher. Let's see what options traders are doing. Go to Microsoft. All right, call buyers and Microsoft. A little bit more straightforward hero pattern here. Bullish opening drive. Oops. Full alert. Traders buy calls from the open. Price moves higher. Few pullbacks. And traders continue to buy calls coming in waves. Now, call signal pretty flat for the day. They've also been selling puts. And Microsoft holding near the highs of the day. All right, that's Microsoft. All right, let's take a look at a couple of stocks in the news today. First, NVIDIA. And NVIDIA, of course, the news is that the Chinese have indicated that NVIDIA violated their anti-monopoly laws, and most likely that's just a negotiating tactic as the U.S.-China trade talks have resumed. So anyway, now it looks like NVIDIA trading up on the day, driven by call buyers. And it looks like most recently there were some put buyers that came in. Looks like a few large orders. But looks like call buyers definitely driving price higher today. And the strong wave of call buyers came in right around 11 o'clock. And I believe NVIDIA did make an announcement earlier today that they weren't violating laws. That maybe that's when the call buyers came in. All right, so let's take a look at Bookmap. Go to NVIDIA. Let's take a look at the. So this is starting. DX feed starts to provide data at 4 a.m. So you can see the sharp drop there. Maybe that's when the announcement came in. And then ever since then, about just after 5 a.m., NVIDIA has been moving higher. A little bit of chop after the open, finding support at the liquidity at 174.50 and 175. And now NVIDIA up near the highs of the day and trading back up to that 178 level. And that looks like, at least according to DX feed, that's where the drop began. Now, of course, on Schwab, NVIDIA is one of the stocks that trades 24/5. So it began trading yesterday evening at 8 p.m., I believe. But anyway, back up to that 178 level. All right, so NVIDIA not really affected by the news. Next stock. Bullish news before the open, Tesla. And Elon Musk announcing that he had purchased, I think, 2.57 million shares of Tesla, about $1 billion worth. And Tesla traded up before the cash open, and now looks like traders may be taking profits. All right, so let's go take a look at Hero. So again, there's NVIDIA call buyers. And again, it looks like now NVIDIA back up toward the last closing. On to Tesla. So overall, Tesla has been pretty strong the last couple of days. Looks like traders taking profits, selling calls. So that's bearish opening drive. Flow alert comes in just after the cash open, setting up a nice reversal just after the open. The call buyers were not in there strong enough, and the call sellers came in. Price moves lower, and right now on Tesla, traders are buying puts, selling calls. That's bearish momentum, and price is moving lower. All right, that's Tesla. Let's take a look at Bookmap. All right, so again, news came in. Resistance at the 430 level. That's before the cash open. And then Tesla started trading lower around 9 a.m. after testing that 430 level again, and now trading down right around 410. So from the 9 a.m. high of 430, Tesla down around 410 now. All right, McLoco wanted to take a look at Intel. I don't have that in Bookmap. We can take a look at a Hero. Go to Hero. All right, Intel call buyers driving price higher earlier today. Full alert comes in a few minutes after the cash open. Traders start buying calls, so nice flow alert signaling a potential shift in hedging flow from negative delta to positive delta. That's what happened. Intel traded up and above the 25 call wall key gamma strike. Found support around that level as call buyers came back in. And now Intel trading just down below that 25 call wall as the call buyers have taken the foot off the gas, as well as the put sellers. So pretty typical pattern for Intel. Movement in the morning and then consolidation beginning mid to late morning. The typical stock pattern. All right, let's go back. Let's take a look at the indexes. If anyone has any questions around me or any more stocks they want me to take a look at, please let me know. I'll be glad to do that. All right, let's take a look at the S&P 500. All right, remember that flow alert that I mentioned. You're welcome, McLogo. Remember that flow alert that I mentioned when we were taking a look at the S&P 500. And there you go. Another timely signal of a potential shift in hedging flow from positive delta to negative delta. And that's exactly what happened. S&P 500 reversed lower. Looks like maybe now trying to move back higher. Let's take a look. All right, so let's go back. Hero. Take a timestamp on that. So that's right before 2 p.m. Go back to ES. So there's that reversal right around 2 p.m. Shift in volume dots, green volume dots on the way up, magenta on the way down. That's the point of control right there. And it looks like S&P 500 found support right around this 660 call wall. And you're welcome, book logo. All right, so that reversal was good for 5, 6, 7 points, depending on how you played it. And again, remember also large traders were in with iceberg orders buying earlier, and then they stopped. Let's take a look at NASDAQ. All right, so NASDAQ still chopping between the upper daily expected move and the QQQ 591 level. Let's go take a look at Trace. All right, looking at the gamma heat map, SPX still in a pocket of negative gamma with blue buying support above, actually below, and then potential resistance up above with the positive gamma. All right, let's take a look now at, and note that the stability index has dropped pretty substantially. This indicates potential for movement in the next few minutes. All right, let's take a look at delta pressure now. All right, so blue buying support below and red selling pressure up above, and somewhat of a neutral spot right now for delta pressure. Let's take a look at charm pressure. All right, so the red shading is showing selling pressure due to time decay, and blue is showing buying support due to time decay. All right, you can look at the charm pressure heat map for potential pinning targets at the end of the day. So you look for blue buying support below and red selling pressure above. So there's one potential pin target. That would be quite a bit of movement down below 65.80 and then up above. So let's see where these levels are. So down below, 65.80, and up above 66.30. And SPX does not seem to be moving enough today to reach either one of those targets. All right, back to Bookmap. All right, now the stability index has jumped up to 63%. All right, back to Bookmap. So 65.80, SPX 65.80 is quite a way down below. And the S&P 500 does not seem to be moving quick enough to make it there by the end of the day. All right, last call for questions, stocks. All right, remember, upcoming this week, tomorrow retail sales come out at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Big day on Wednesday, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Housing starts, building permits. 9:30 a.m. VIX expiration. And then, of course, the FOMC announcement at 2 p.m. Press conference at 2:30. I'll cover that live, again, in Discord only. And I hope to see you there, and then we'll talk about the Friday options expiration as well. All right, thank you very much for joining me on Discord today. Have a great afternoon, and I will see you on Wednesday. Thanks again. Bye.